Hello friends and welcome back. I am Zeeshan and I am back with this lecture series that aims to help you boost your score by up to 30 marks or even more in the upcoming UPSC Preliminary Examination 2020. But my dear friends, I must remind you that this is going to be my last lecture as far as the lectures that are being provided freely on the internet. You must be knowing that we have launched the Decimate Prelims program, and from now on my lectures will only be accessible through subscription to the Decimate Prelims program. The Decimate Prelims program has other important components as well. For example, it has the component of syllabus consolidation. It has the component of mock tests, good quality mock tests, and it has the third and the vital component of special techniques that I have been teaching for quite a while. But please understand, there are going to be two fundamental differences in the techniques that I have already shared with you in the videos that are freely available, and the techniques that I will be sharing as part of the Decimate Prelims program. The first fundamental difference would be the techniques that I will be sharing in the Decimate Prelims program would be more advanced in nature. Till now, the techniques that I have shared are more rudimentary in nature, they are more basic in nature. But the techniques that I will be sharing there would help you to solve even the most seemingly impossible questions. Those questions which either the most of the candidates tend to leave or mark as wrong. So that's the first fundamental difference that's going to be there. And then the second fundamental difference that you can expect in the Tikdam lectures as part of the Decimate Prelims program is that I will not only reveal the techniques. Till now I have just been revealing and explaining the techniques, but as part of the Decimate Prelims program, I will make sure that the subscribers of Decimate Prelims are not only told about the techniques, but they are empowered to practically use those techniques in the real examination environment. Because just revealing techniques without using it in practical sense would be useless, it would be worthless. So I would be taking special care so that subscribers of this program, the Decimate Prelims program, will be able to maximize their score and will be able to confidently face the examination, and I will take special care that they are able to use these techniques with greater certainty, with greater confidence in the real examination hall. Alright friends, let's move on with today's agenda. Today we will be discussing economic questions and 5 specific techniques that would apply to economic questions. Let's start with a question that was asked in 2019. The Tikdam that we will be using in this particular question is simple, which we call choosing the odd man out. Or choosing the odd man out is something that we have been doing since our school days, and it is very much applicable in the UPSC examination as well. So just let's give a look at the question. The question is, which of the following is not a sub-index of the World Bank's Ease of Doing Business Index? Alright, the options are A. Maintenance of law and order. Option B. Paying taxes. Option C. Registering property. And option D. Dealing with construction permits. Now, please remember the technique that we are using here. We are using the technique called choosing the odd man out. Now you are faced with 4 options, and assuming that you have no idea or you have just some idea about ease of doing business index and its parameters. So just let's give a look to the options that we are provided with. Like I have said, the options are maintenance of law and order, paying taxes, registering property, dealing with construction permits. So if I ask you a question to choose one answer, to choose one odd man out among the 4 options, which one are you likely to choose? See, it's quite easy. Option B, option C and option D pertain to the economic sector in some way or the other. I mean paying taxes, registering property and dealing with construction permits. It all has something to do with the economy, something to do with the financial sector. But option A, maintenance of law and order, it has no direct relation, no direct implication on the economy, on the financial sector. So if you just think logically, then option A clearly stands out as the odd man among the given 4 options. So please remember, what are we doing here? We are using the technique of choosing the odd man out, and in this particular question, option A is that odd statement, maintenance of law and order, has nothing to do with ease of doing business. Alright friends, let's further test this technique on a question that I have framed for Civilsdaily, and the question is: Economic and Social Survey of Asia and the Pacific 2018 is the latest flagship publication of. So option A is World Bank, option B United Nations, option C International Monetary Fund, that is IMF, and option D World Economic Forum. Now, having solved the first question asked by UPSC, now let's see where do we stand in this question. What do you think can be the odd man among the 4 given options? Just think logically, and which one option can be eliminated as the odd man out? Let me make it more comprehensible. Option A is World Bank, option C is International Monetary Fund, and option D is World Economic Forum. And only option B is an odd man in the sense all other 3 options are international monetary organization. All these 3 organizations pertain to governance of international economic order. But option B, United Nations, stands quite apart from these 3 options. It has nothing to do in a direct sense with international economic governance or financial management for that matter. So if we had to take risk in favor of one option, if we did not have any idea about this question, so the risk must be taken in favor of option B, that is United Nations, which in this case is 100% correct, which means United Nations, that means Economic and Social Survey of Asia and the Pacific 2018 is the flagship publication of United Nations and ESCAP, ESCAP in particular. So please understand what have we done here. We have used the technique of choosing the odd man out, and we have eliminated option A, option C, option D, assuming that we have no idea whatsoever about this specific publication, and still we could arrive at the right answer. Obviously, there is a degree of risk in this case, but again, as I always say, you need to take calculated risks in your prelims examination, especially given the context of past 3 or 4 years, the kind of questions, the kind of papers that UPSC is setting. You need to take calculated risks, otherwise your chances of clearing prelims are reduced by manifold. Alright friends, let's move to another Tikdam for the day, the next technique for the day, which I call probing the philosophy behind the keyword. Probing the philosophy behind the keyword. What does it mean? It means you are provided with a question and you have no idea whatsoever about that particular question, and you may tend to leave it. But just thinking logically about the provided keyword, the philosophy behind the keyword, you can logically arrive at the right answer. Let me make it more comprehensible to you by discussing a question asked in 2018 UPSC question paper. And the question is, consider the following statements. Statement 1, areca nut, 2, barley, 3, coffee, 4, finger millet, 5, groundnut, 6, sesame, 7. Turmeric. And the question that is being asked is, the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs has announced the minimum support price for which of the above? Now I would say that it is almost impossible to know for sure that MSP is provided to which crops and is not provided to which crops, because there is a long list of crops to which MSP is provided, and it is quite impossible for anybody to just memorize the entire list. So generally the students tend to panic after seeing such questions, but let's see what can we do using our technique. The technique again we are using is probing the philosophy behind the keyword, and the keyword in this particular question is minimum support price. Minimum support price. So my dear friends, just let's ask ourselves a question: what is the utility behind MSP? What is the philosophy behind MSP? MSP is provided to support the farmers, the poor farmers, and to ensure that farmers get a minimum guaranteed income. That is one thing. Another philosophy, another reasoning behind MSP would be providing a stable, a stable market, a stable pricing regime in the Indian market, in the agricultural market. So these are the basic philosophies. Now let us come back to the question. We have been provided with 7 items, and just let's look at those 7 items. My dear friends, the main point of interest for us here would be option 3, that is coffee. And why do I say that? Anyone can say after thinking logically that coffee is not a normal crop. Coffee is a plantation crop. And my dear friends, MSP is not at all provided to plantation crops. Although there have been demands to provide MSP even to plantation crops, but that's a different thing. The present policy is that MSP is not provided to plantation crops. It is provided to other basic crops just like rice, wheat, jawar and so on. So assuming option 3 coffee to be wrong, let's see what are we left with. If we eliminate option 3, my dear friends, option A, option C and option D are automatically eliminated because they have 3. Only option B is left, that is 2, 4, 5 and 6 only are provided with MSP. So please understand what have we done here. We have used our Tikdam, we have used our technique of probing the philosophy behind the keyword, and we have tried to understand the philosophy behind behind MSP, and we could successfully eliminate option 3, that is coffee, and in this way we could arrive at the right answer. Please understand, this is a real question asked by UPSC, and given the examination pressure, it is quite very difficult. It is almost impossible to arrive at the right answer just by your knowledge base. You need to think creatively, and this is one way of thinking creatively and arriving at the right answer. Alright friends, let's further test this technique on a question that I have framed for Civilsdaily, and the question is, in the context of international trade, early harvest package refers to which of the following? And the options are: a clause related to the agreement on agriculture under the World Trade Organization, fine. Option B, a precursor to a free trade agreement between 2 trading partners. Alright. Option C, a subsidy mechanism given to the developing countries for trade in agriculture. Alright. And option D, a transportation agreement signed between countries for the movement of goods. Now please remember the Tikdam, the technique that we are using here. The technique that we are using is probing the philosophy behind the keyword. In the last question that we discussed, we had successfully arrived at the right answer by decoding the meaning of MSP. Now let's see what can we do in this particular question. The keyword that we are focusing on is early harvest package. Early harvest. So what does early harvest mean to you? Right? It means something that is done prior to the final deal is finalized. Right? It is something that is done prior to something else. That thing comes to the mind first and foremost. Now with this idea, let's move forward and see if we can find the right answer. Option A says that it is a clause related to the agreement on agriculture under the World Trade Organization. Okay. Option C, it is a subsidy mechanism given to the developing countries for trade in agriculture. All right. Option D, a transportation agreement signed between countries for the movement of goods. Now see, all these three statements doesn't seem to imply something that is done prior to some another thing, right? We are focusing on the word early harvest. Now let's come to option B and let's see, does it make sense with the phrase that we have in point, that is early harvest. Option B says it is a precursor to a free trade agreement between two trading partners. Now my dear friends, I hope things are getting more clear. Option B clearly says that it is a precursor to a free trade agreement. So option B logically links with the phrase in question, that is the early harvest package. Please remember the technique that we are using here. The technique we are using is probing the philosophy behind the keyword. And after probing the philosophy behind the phrase early harvest, we can easily arrive at option B as the correct answer, and we can easily take a calculated risk in favor of option B. Alright my dear friends, let's move on to another technique, another Tikdam for the day. And the third Tikdam for the day is betting on the most correct option. Betting on the most correct option. What does it mean? It means when faced with a question about which you have no idea whatsoever, you choose an option which seems to be most correct among the given four options, and by that virtue you arrive at the right answer. Let me make it more comprehensible to you by discussing a question that was asked in 2019 UPSC Prelims paper, and the question is, with reference to land reforms in independent India, which one of the following statements is correct? The options are: the sealing laws were aimed at family holdings and not individual holdings. Fine. Option B, the major aim of land reforms was providing agricultural land to all the landless. Fine. Option C, it resulted in cultivation of cash crops as a predominant form of cultivation. Alright. And option D, land reforms permitted no exemptions to the sealing limits. Alright. Please remember the technique that we are using. The technique is betting on the most correct option. Let's directly jump to option B. It says the major aim of land reforms was providing agricultural land to all the landless. Now just think logically. Would it be feasible, could it have been feasible to provide land to all the landless given the capabilities of the Indian state at that point of time and the given number of landless at that point of time? Talking about the specifics, only around 2% of the holdings were successfully provided to the landless people, only around 2%. But those are specifics. But even thinking logically, this statement seems to be quite overblown. Okay. Option C, it says it resulted in cultivation of cash crops as a predominant form of cultivation. So my dear friends, again, if we think logically, at that point of time, India was starved for grains. The main priority for India was to produce surplus food grains. India could not even think of cultivating cash crops by compromising food grains. So option C also seems to be quite absurd in nature. Option D, land reforms permitted no exemptions to the ceiling limits. Now, in general, we know that when UPSC provides such extreme words like no, never, and so on, those statements are more likely to be wrong. And even if we think logically, that land reforms permitted no exemptions to the ceiling limits. Speaking specifically, land reforms had provided exemptions to ceiling limits, but those are points of specifics which we need not discuss here. We need to discuss only about the techniques. So option D is also quite overblown in nature, which we can eliminate. Now, talking about option A, what does option A say? It says the ceiling laws were aimed at family holdings and not individual holdings. Now, talking about the specifics, the ceiling laws were aimed at family holding and not individual holdings. The reason being, what individuals used to do, they used to transfer their lands in the names of their family members. So, to avoid these loopholes, the law was applied to family holdings and not to individual holdings. So, that is about the specifics. But again, remembering the technique that we are using, the technique is betting on the most correct option. Having read all the 4 options, which option appeals to you the most, or which options seems to be most correct logically? Obviously, it is option A, which says the law was applied to family holdings and not individual holdings. It seems to be the safest options among the 4 options, and by choosing option A, we can arrive at the right answer, even while having no idea or very little idea about the question being asked. Alright friends, let's further test this technique on a question drafted by me for Civilsdaily, and the question is, with reference to economy, the term base effect refers to, and the options are a normalized average of price relatives for a given class of goods or services in a given region. Option B, impact of the rise in price level in the previous year over the corresponding rise in price levels in the current year. Alright, option C, a monetary policy strategy used by central banks for maintaining price levels at a certain level. Alright, option D, the bonus brought by inflation to the borrowers. Alright. So, my dear friends, please remember the technique that we are using. The technique we are using is betting on the most correct option. And the keyword that we are interested here, that is asked in the question, is base effect. What does base effect imply? If we think logically, the term base effect would mean a base is being taken as the reference and it is providing some effect, it is giving some effect on some another variable. So, there is a base which is affecting some another variable. So, this is the rudimentary understanding that is going on in our mind after having just one look at the phrase base effect. Now, coming back to the options. Option A says it is a normalized average of price relatives for a given class of goods or services in a given region. Alright. Option C says that it is a monetary policy strategy used by the central banks for maintaining price level at a certain level. Alright. Option D says the bonus brought by inflation to the borrowers. Now, we are betting at the most correct option and we are specifically focusing on the phrase base effect. After reading options A, C, D, they do not resonate directly with the phrase base effect. Now, after having read these 3 options, let's come to option B. It says it is an impact of the rise in price level in the previous year over the corresponding rise in price level in the current year. which means the price level in the previous year has some implication on the price level in the ongoing current year. So the rudimentary logic that was going on in your mind about base effect, that a base having some effect on some future variable, resonates quite perfectly with option B. So after having read all these options, taking inspiration from our technique of betting on the most correct option. Please remember, I am using the word betting because here you do not know the correct answer for sure. So you are gambling in a way. So we would be choosing option B as our correct answer even after not having any idea, any clue about the question being asked, and even after that we would arrive at the right answer. So please remember what we have done. We have arrived at the right answer by betting on the most correct option, by in a way gambling putting a gamble on the one of the options which seems to be most correct among the 4 given options. All right, my dear friends, let's move on to another technique for the day, another Tikdam for the day, which I call honing your emotions. Honing your emotions. What does it mean? It means when faced with a question in the examination hall, we tend to be in a hurry. We tend to rush over solving the questions, and in that hurry, we tend to mark the answer as wrong even after knowing the right answer. In these kind of questions, please mind my words, UPSC plays mind games with you. UPSC knows that you know the correct answer, but you are in a hurry. So deliberately, what UPSC does, it places such a statement, such a phrase or such a word at option A that you would mark option A as your right answer even after knowing the correct answer. Let me make it more comprehensible to you by discussing a question that was asked in 2019 UPSC Prelims paper, and the question is, Atal Innovation Mission is set up under the options are Department of Science and Technology, option A, option B, Ministry of Labour and Employment, option C, Niti Aayog, and option D, Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship. All right. So coming back to our technique, honing your emotions. So more than being a technique, I would say it is a word of caution. Any serious aspirant or any aspirant who has been just following newspaper in a rudimentary format will know that Atal Innovation Mission is set up under the Niti Aayog. But my dear friends, in the 2019 paper, many candidates and even many of my friends marked this answer as wrong. What they did, they marked option A as their answer, which says Department of Science and Technology. So why did they mark option A despite knowing that Niti Aayog would be the right answer? So here is the game that UPSC has played with the minds of the aspirants. The word that we are emphasizing is Atal Innovation Mission, innovation, and the next thing that you read is option A, that is Department of Science and Technology. So our mind tends to subconsciously connect innovation with Department of Science and Technology. So it tends to blind our mind. We don't care to read the other options with focus, with concentration, and we just think that yes, option A is the correct answer, and you are being played with in that way. So my dear friends, this technique is nothing but a word of caution that you need to read all the options carefully rather than just jumping at the right answer after reading the question. And this is a textbook example how students were fooled. Even aspirants who have been writing prelims for the past 3, 4, 5 years were fooled by this question, and they marked option A as their answer, while in fact option C, Niti Aayog, is the right answer in this particular question. Alright my dear friends, let's quickly test this technique on another question framed by me for Civilsdaily. And the question is, the term Kudumbashri often seen in news refers to. The options are: option A, an initiative to change negative family and community attitudes towards the girl child in Telangana. Right. Option B, a World Bank project in India focused on the welfare of adolescent girls and young women. All right. And option C, an environmental movement demanding better protection of natural resources in India. And option D, a women-oriented community-based poverty reduction program being implemented in Kerala. So again, having solved the last question framed by UPSC, we can easily see the pattern. I have easily framed option A in such a way that the students, the aspirants who have not studied about Kudumbashri scheme may think option A as the right answer. Option A says that Kudumbashri is an initiative to change negative family community attitudes towards the girl child in Telangana. Now, the students who haven't read about Kudumbashri would relate Kudumbashri with a scheme pertaining to women or a girl child or adolescent girls. So, after having read option A, they may tend to mark option A in the heat of rush, and they may get it wrong. But obviously, it's quite an obvious answer. The answer in this case is, it is a women-oriented community-based poverty reduction program being implemented in Kerala, that is option D. But please understand the technique we are using here of honing your emotions. As I already said, more than a technique, it is a word of caution that please don't jump to a conclusion without reading all the options carefully. Okay, my dear friends, let's move on to the next technique for the day, the next Tikdam for the day, which I call discarding the distrust of the unheard. Discarding distrust of the unheard. What does it mean? It means when faced with a question framed by UPSC deliberately throws such words or such phrases or such statements at us about which either we have not heard or we might have read about it, but just in a rudimentary format. So we may not have the requisite confidence to attempt that option with certainty. Let me explain to you by giving an example of a question asked by UPSC in 2019 prelims paper, and the question is, in the context of any country, which one of the following would be considered as part of its social capital? Fine. And the options are: option A, the proportion of literates in the population. Fine. Option B, the stock of its buildings, other infrastructure and machines. Right. Option C, the size of population in the working age group. All right. And option D, the level of mutual trust and harmony in the society. Now please remember the technique that we are using here. The technique we are using is discarding the distrust of the unheard. Now the question specifically asks about social capital. So UPSC candidates have generally read about human capital, physical capital and so on, but not so much about social capital. I'm not talking about sociology students, I'm talking about UPSC aspirants in general. So let's look at the options. Option A says the proportion of literates in the population. So you might consider it as part of human capital, right? Option B, the stock of buildings, other infrastructure and machines. So this can come under the head of physical capital, physical infrastructure and so on. Option C, the size of population in the working age group. Again, this can be part of your human capital. So all the three options, option A, B, C, pertain either to the human capital or to the physical tangible capital. But option D, it says the level of mutual trust and harmony in the society. Please remember the technique. The technique we are using is discarding the distrust of the unheard. So level of mutual trust and harmony in the society and relating it to social capital is something that we will tend to avoid in the examination hall if we haven't read about it or if we haven't heard about it. So by saying that we need to discard the distrust of the unheard, I mean to imply that we can directly relate social capital with option D, but many students, many of my friends did not mark option D just because they were apprehensive of the statement, because they had not read about this particular facet. They tended to mark either option A or option C as the correct answer, as their answer, which was obviously the wrong answer. In this case, obviously option D is the correct answer, which, giving my own example, I marked D as the correct answer in my 2019 paper. So how could I arrive at the right answer? I could arrive at the right answer just by using this very technique, and using this technique with confidence, using this technique with certainty, and that is how we arrive at the right answer even after not having the slightest clue about the question being asked. Alright, my dear friends, let's quickly test this technique at a question framed by me for Civilsdaily, and the question is, which of the following is an example of Pigovian tax? And the technique we are using is discarding the distrust of the unheard. Alright, Pigovian tax, and the options are tax on diesel, option B education cess, option C health sector cess, and option D surcharge on income tax. Alright, now my dear friends, here by implying the need to discard the distrust of the unheard word in this case would be Pigovian tax. Now, even if you have read about various kind of taxes that are being in news, that are in vogue, you might not be able to recall Pigovian tax for sure in the examination hall. So what you need to do is think creatively in this context. So let's think creatively and let's see whether we can arrive at the right answer. Option A talks about tax on diesel. Option B talks about educational cess. Option C health sector cess, and option D pertains to surcharge on income tax. Now, assuming that we have no idea whatsoever about the Pigovian tax and we are just trying to find the right answer through the options, if we look closely, my dear friend, option B educational cess, option C health sector cess, and option D surcharge on income tax, all these three options pertain to the economic sector. Only option A remains, tax on diesel. Obviously it is also a tax, but it pertains to the environmental sector, right? So thinking logically and also taking cue from an earlier Tikdam that we have discussed of taking out the odd man from the given options, tax on diesel stands apart quite starkly. So again, drawing inspiration from our technique, discarding the distrust of the unheard phrase in this case is provided in the question itself and not in the options. The unheard word in this case is Pigovian tax, and we are marking option A, we are assuming option A to be the right answer because it seems to stand quite apart among the all four options that are provided to us, and in this way we arrive at the right answer even if we haven't heard about Pigovian tax or any other term for that matter. Alright friends, let's quickly summarize the Tikdams that I have taught you today. The first Tikdam that I taught was choosing the odd man out. The second Tikdam was probing the philosophy behind the keyword. The third Tikdam was betting on the most correct option. The fourth Tikdam was honing your emotions. It was more of a word of caution, right? And the fifth and last Tikdam for the day was discarding the distrust of the unheard. All right, my dear friends, that was all on today's agenda. As I have already said, this was the last lecture as far as the series that we were running that was freely available on the internet on various social media sites. But from now on, my videos will only be available through subscription to the Decimate Prelims program. You can access my future videos by subscribing to the Decimate Prelims program, and the link to Decimate Prelims can be found below in the description box. And as I have already said, that you can find two fundamental differences between these videos that I have shared with you freely and the subscription based videos, and those fundamental changes that I have already told are that the techniques that I would be explaining would be more advanced in nature. That's one thing. And another thing is that I would be taking special care that you as subscribers of Decimate Prelims are able to successfully apply these Tikdams, apply these techniques in your actual examination and boost your score not only by 30 but by much more marks in your actual examination. So hope to see you in Decimate Prelims program. Until then, as I always say, don't only work hard but more importantly work smart.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon on the YouTube app and never miss another update from Civilsdaily.